Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Harrah's Hoosier Park here in the Dan Patch studio. Michael Chamberlain, Rick Moore, and Jacob Reinheimer all here to hope the third time is a charm, because the first two times out of the box, we didn't do so good, guys. So we got to kind of redeem ourselves with this Belmont Stakes. This is a different Belmont Stakes than anyone that we've seen in some time. 1.25 miles at Saratoga, as they are redoing the Belmont Park main grandstand. They have doing a lot of renovations to that, so they will be holding the Belmont at the Spa this year. First of all, outstanding card on Saturday from top to bottom. Well done by Naira to put that together. But the Belmont Stakes itself will feature a field of 10 going that 1.25 mile distance.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There's really some all top-notch horses in here. I think there's we'll talk about it, but I think there's a couple that are standouts as far as I'm concerned. But there's some other really, really good ones. I think this is a really good crop of 3-year-olds this year. And I know people say, well, why do you say that? You look at them, and been some outstanding performances. And, unfortunately, Muth was scratched out of the Preakness. Yes. We haven't seen him. I don't know when he's going to come back. I guess we're looking to see when Fierceness
I thought I saw he was going to go to the Haskell.
Yeah. So but all in all, you got the Derby winner is going to compete in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown. When's the last time that happened, when they weren't going for a triple crown?
So sometime for sure.
So your thoughts, Jacob?
No, I completely agree. I think this Belmont comes with a lot of hype that maybe we haven't seen in recent years, because we get the Derby winner, we get the Preakness winner in this Belmont field. I think there's a lot of intrigue with it going to Saratoga for the first time. Saratoga's always going to draw some good horses, and cutting back in distance too, just going 1.25 miles instead of the traditional 1.5 miles. I think it had some of these guys maybe take a chance in joining the Belmont field where they wouldn't have in the past. And I think it's a stellar field from top to bottom, as you kind of mentioned, highlighted by a couple standouts. I agree.
We have a field of 10, and we'll take a look at the field of 10, led by the Kentucky Derby runner-up, Sierra Leone, 9-5 on the morning line. The second choice is number 10, Mindframe, at 7-2 for trainer Todd Pletcher. This one has won twice in 2 previous starts by a combined 22 lengths. One at Gulfstream on March 30th and one at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Derby Day, and was the betting favorite in both of those, I might add. And the third choice is the Kentucky Derby winner, number 3, Mystic Dan, 5-1, the same post position he had in Louisville.
I remember back in, it was late March. I was just looking at March 30th. It was winter time. Believe me, it was still winter time. But I was sitting on my couch, and it was on a Saturday. I was watching Gulfstream, and this maiden race comes up, and there's his first-time starter. They're betting him off the board. I mean, just betting him off the board. It's Mindframe, obviously. Well, he won by about an area code. And I remember calling friends of mine saying, if you didn't see it, you got to replay this race. You won't believe it. It was the horse looks, he could be, what kind of freaky horse he could be, I don't know. And he came back and won that race at Churchill and did it even easier. I don't know what kind of horse it is. Well,
The first race at Gulfstream was 7 furlongs, and he covered that in 1:21.3.
First start.
Yeah, first start out of the box. And then he won at 1 1/16 in 1:43, and was not headed in the Churchill Downs race. He was broken mid-pack in the first race and managed to pass horses. So he's shown both tendencies to be able to come from off the pace and to set the pace and win both times.
I think I look at his purchase price, $600,000. He'll make that look like the biggest bargain since I don't know what.
Well, he could do that Saturday.
He could do that Saturday, and then what he may be, his stallion value, can't even imagine.
Yes, and I can see them making him one of the favorites in the field. Obviously, making him the lower on the morning line than the Kentucky Derby winner. That's a little. I think that's a lot of confidence in that horse from the New York morning line maker.
Well, and I'll turn it over to Jacob. But the morning line maker, he's not. We've talked about it. He's not there to pick winners.
No, absolutely.
What's the public?
Right.
What does he think the public is going to do as far as the line is concerned? And I think it's what he did here.
Yep, I completely agree. And yeah, as we kind of look at our picks now, I was kind of the odd man out where I went with Resilience on top, kind of A little bit of a heel turn come where
Mind
I
frame.
was on Kentucky Derby, or Mind
Mind
Frame,
frame,
yeah.
yes.
So I went with him on top, but I think it was more a value play with what Sierra Leone's going to be bet down in this race. I think we see it on the morning line with Sierra Leone down to 9-5 on the morning line. I think Mindframe is going to offer a little bit more value, but I think those are the two main competitors for me. And I think we all kind of agree with this, where I think those two kind of stand out from the rest. But I remember on Derby Day, you stopped me up in front of Trackside Rewards to kind of tell me about that race. Mindframe went on Derby Day at Churchill Downs, and I went and watched the replay and was just really blown away. This is a huge step up in competition, obviously, going right into a Triple Crown race. But the fact that Todd Pletcher put him in this race shows some confidence, I think, in this horse. And with Mindframe, I think tactically he's going to have a little bit more of an advantage on Sierra Leone, too, where if Sierra Leone's going to win this, he's going to have to go by Mindframe to do so, turning for home. And that was really the difference maker for me, is I think tactically Mindframe has a little bit more of an advantage than Sierra Leone.
Well, and the running styles, as we said, could be different here, because if Mindframe does elect to go to the front, he's going to have to deal with Seize the Gray.
Yes.
He's going to have to deal with Dornock. There are front runners in this race that are going to play a part in that. I mean, he may be able to settle just off the speed and sit third or fourth and still be close enough to the pace where he can make a move, but also could possibly, if it gets a really fast pace, get sucked up into that speed, and that would give Sierra Leone a chance to be able to get that closing kick going.
You know, we both used Sierra Leone.
Yes.
I've been gushing about Mindframe, but my top pick is Sierra Leone just because of the seasoning this horse has. He's 2 inches from being undefeated.
Yes, he is.
He literally, and that's not being facetious. He's 2 inches from being undefeated in his career, and one of the great derbies that I think we'll always remember, right?
Yes.
And he and Forever Young battling each other throughout the stretch, probably costing each other the Derby.
Yes, exactly.
But he has to do what come from behind horses have to do, and a lot of times you have to circle horses, right? And
Yes.
you don't get the easiest trip. So I think it's going to be a very interesting race.
And one interesting thing about Sierra Leone in here is they have gone away from Tyler Gaffleone and gone to Flavian Pratt as the rider. Tyler Gaffleone will be riding the 7 Protective for the Micropoli owned and Todd Pletcher trained colt, the 7 horse. But the jockey change here after just missing in the Kentucky Derby is certainly a very interesting call by Chad Brown.
Yeah, and I think, you kind of go through that Kentucky Derby trip Sierra Leone went through. I can see why they maybe went away, and there were some other antics in the stretch, too, with the Kentucky Derby there with Sierra Leone. So I don't blame them for maybe going a little bit different direction, as he's mentioned, kind of coming up just in short in the Kentucky Derby, if you feel like a rider would make a difference in that situation. But Sierra Leone has done absolutely nothing wrong throughout his entire career. You can't really put any of it on the horse. Maybe that loss to Dornock, where I thought he got a little bit green when he got by him in the stretch and allows Dornock to come back. But ever since, he's done everything right, and he's been really just a monster. I know how high you and I were going into the Kentucky Derby. We kind of thought he was a lot going into it, and maybe with a little bit different trip, he gets the job done there. Yeah,
what a price. You're not going to get that price on him like we had in the Derby. 9-2, if I'm not mistaken. You and I were just like convinced. I mean, there was no stopping us that this was the horse.
Right.
And came up we all know. And poor Mystic Dan, we're not giving him any love at all. He wins the Derby, second in the Preakness, and now he's an afterthought here.
And the thing of it is you have him both fourth. Yeah. I have him third. So it's very interesting that, and he, again, in the same way, he really has done nothing wrong. I mean, he got the trip. We have to all agree in the Kentucky Derby,
the greatest trip ever.
Was able to come through on the inside and win.
Trip ever.
And basically, the way Seize the Gray won the Preakness, he had a lot left in the tank in the stretch and was able to hold off any kind of closing charge from Mystic Dan and Catching Freedom, who was right there also. He really has done nothing wrong in this entire sequence, and none of us even have him in the top 2.
No, I think he's the one horse that's competing. Well, not the only one, but he is. It's going to be his third tough race in 6 weeks. So it's a lot to ask of him.
Yeah, that may be the one thing that really is working against him is the entirety of the Triple Crown, and he's the only horse in this field that has gone through that.
He did prove that the Kentucky Derby was no fluke, though, in the Preakness. I
I
thought he
agree.
ran a
I
very
agree.
good
No,
race.
I
He
agree
proved
with you. I agree
that
with
it was
you.
no fluke. He's a
I
legit
agree with you.
top-end 3-year-old. I do think, coming back with that short turnaround. Seize the Gray was coming off a short turnaround as well. He raced on Derby Day, but obviously Mystic Dan had to go a longer distance in the bigger field in the Kentucky Derby and just didn't quite have enough to get by him in the lane, where I really thought he got the perfect trip in the Preakness. He got everything you'd asked for. I actually kind of thought he had it turning for home, and then he just couldn't quite get by Seize the Gray. And I have to imagine coming back another 3 weeks later, I think there's just going to be a little bit less in the tank for Mystic Dan this week, too, even in the Belmont, and that's why I opted to put him fourth.
Well, let's talk about Seize the Gray, the Preakness winner. He drew the inside post. He's 8-1 here for D. Wayne Lucas by Arrogate, who certainly has shown in his short time as a stallion that he has been an influential stallion, now with a classic winner under his belt. Won the Pate Mile on Derby Day in very impressive fashion, then went right to the front in the Preakness and went all the way in Baltimore, and now he draws the rail here. I have to assume they might try the same tack, although D. Wayne Lucas says he doesn't necessarily have to have the lead, which is what he did in Louisville on Derby Day. He did not go to the front right away. He managed to rally from off the pace a little bit to win that race.
Well, as you said, a little bit.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to get far back,
No.
not against these type horses.
No.
I respectfully disagree with Wayne Lucas, and kudos to him. He doesn't duck anybody.
No.
He races his horses, and he'll take on any comers. I think this horse has to be first or second throughout the race. I really do, if he's going to have any chance at all.
And I think the other horse that's going to be forwardly placed here is Dornock, because he did not get out of the gate in the Derby from that number 1 post position. We all thought it might be him going with Track Phantom and going and that did not work out that way.
Yep.
It ended up being Just Steel, another Lucas trainee, and Fierceness in the Kentucky Derby that were the pace setters up there. And Dornock was basically mid-pack all the way, finished 10th. And so, I almost kind of scratched that race out as far as, what I think of Dornock here. And none of us have him in the top 4 selections. But, at 15-1 on the morning line, that's not a bad value on that horse.
He was the biggest question mark for me, because this is a horse that were kind of early on the Derby trail. He had a lot of backers and a lot of believers. If you go back to the Remsen, where he knows that Sierra Leone, and kind of coming in, and then the Fountain of Youth, we watched that race. That was a race impacted by a lot of scratches. He got to the front end and won, but maybe not in as impressive a fashion. Then obviously in the Bluegrass, really not quite a match for Sierra Leone in that situation. But if he goes back to that earlier form, and he's done his best work on the front end, and that's where he hasn't been able to get in each of those last 2 starts in the Derby and in the Bluegrass. If he gets to the front end, I do wonder if he returns to a little bit more to form, but I do think he is going to have to work hard to get there.
A horse that you and I both used, Jacob, a horse I really like, and if he won it, it would not surprise me at all, is number 2, Resilience. I watched this horse win the Wood Memorial, and I think I held it against him because he had the absolute perfect trip. He kind of had the Mystic Dan trip in the Wood Memorial.
Right.
Never had to leave the rail until he pulled out in the stretch, won easily. And then hit the 18 hole, which, I kind of eliminated him from the 18 hole, but he only gets beat 7 lengths in the Derby. Now you got a fresh horse getting an inside post position who's obviously in good form. He only got beat 7 lengths in the Derby.
Remember, turning for home at the top of the stretch in the Derby, he actually almost got his nose in front before Mystic Dan was able to burst through at the inside, because he was right there with Stronghold. The 2 of them were together at the top of the stretch, and then Mystic Dan snuck through on the inside. But Resilience ran a very good Derby, I thought.
That's honestly kind of why I liked him. He was forwardly placed throughout the Derby, as you mentioned, made a big move coming around the far turn, but he was extremely wide on the far turn, whereas opposed to Mystic Dan got to cut the corner there in that situation, and didn't fade where a lot of those front runners did in the Derby. They kind of dropped off. Resilience obviously wasn't a match for the horses that got away from him on the front end, and he was going backwards a little bit, but he wasn't like dropping like a rock through the field. I thought he held on very gamely, and with an inside post position here, if he can get away, kind of stalk from just off the pace as we've seen him do throughout, I think he can work out a very nice trip and be a factor turning for home.
And he's a son of Into Mischief, who has become by far the leading sire in the world right now. Yeah. And this horse here, I'm with you, Jacob. I thought he distinguished himself. He did not give it up easy. He did not fall back. He did not give up. He kept trying. The 18 hole, really. I mean, you better have things go your way.
Yes,
right?
that's true. I mean, that's a tough spot to win from, or tough spot to. And again, he ran a very good race, I have to say. But just a lot of factors were working against him
Yep.
Yes.
in Louisville. And one other horse that was in Louisville. We're going to talk about the horses that were in the Peter Pan separately here in a second. But I do want to finish the thoughts on the Derby. Is the 8-horse Honor Marie? Florent Giroux is going to ride for trainer D. Whitworth Beckman. And, I know a lot of people were high on this horse going into Louisville and ended up going off at about 15-1 and was last, 20th and last, as they were on the backstretch and managed to pick through the field and got up to finish 8th. Now, I'm sure passing a lot of tiring horses in there had something to do with that. I'm sure that it wasn't all, him making up ground and catching up. I mean, because he still got beat 13 and a half lengths when it comes to the final margin. But, Honor Marie didn't run a terrible race after basically being the last horse in the field.
And no disrespect to Ben Curtis, but I think Florent Giroux, they put him on this horse for a reason. I think it's a good move putting Florent Giroux on this horse. I really do.
I will say, you go back through this horse's history, though, he was a candidate for that kind of trip to get himself in that kind of trouble, as he is one of those horses that kind of goes to the back end early. And that's my concern here as we cut back in distance, going to a 1.25 miles as opposed to the 1.5 miles, which is kind of why I went away from Sierra Leone as well, where I thought a 1.5 miles Sierra Leone would really be hard to beat in this situation. I feel the same way about Honor Marie. I wonder how much work he's going to leave himself, how much traffic he's going to have to get through here.
Well, as we now take a look at the 3 horses that were in the Peter Pan, which was run at Aqueduct, or as I should say, Belmont at Aqueduct, as they prefer to say it. The 4-horse, the Wine Steward, the 5-horse Antiquarian, who actually won the Peter Pan. The Wine Steward was second, and the 7-horse Protective, who was third in the Peter Pan. Now, that is traditionally in the same way that the Federico Tessio is a race as a springboard to the Preakness, the Peter Pan is kind of a springboard to the Belmont and has kind of served that purpose through the years.
Yeah, I didn't use any of those 3 horses, and maybe I'll regret it, but I just didn't see them as the same tier as the horses that we've been talking about. I really don't, but who knows?
I do have to say, though, the Wine Steward is a horse that I keep seeing coming up, and I know you used him underneath on your ticket, so I do kind of want to know your reasoning there.
Well, I like the fact that, one, he has a win over the track. This horse has won at Saratoga, did that in a New York State-bred stake race, the funny side, on August 27th, and since then has been second 3 times, including in the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, and then was second in the Lexington to Encino, who ended up scratching out of the Derby, and was second in the Peter Pan, but had the lead in that race before Antiquarian was able to get by in the stretch, and only lost by less than a length. Has been the betting favorite in 4 of 6 lifetime starts, has 3 wins, 3 seconds, and really has done nothing wrong. And I was always a big fan of Vino Rosso. Yeah. I thought when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic, let's just put it this way, I did very well. So I've always been a big fan of Vino Rosso, and to see one of his offspring here, I said, I think this is a horse I definitely think I can give a chance to.
Son of Curlin, that's regal blood right there.
Yes,
the son of Curlin. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get any better. That's very strong. And and again, picking Sierra Leone on top, I wanted to try to find a place. I wanted to try to find a horse that might, if getting up underneath, might trigger some kind of a payout here. And I thought this was the likely horse that could do it.
I still, getting back to Sierra Leone, I'm still a big believer in this horse. I didn't lose any faith in him. He didn't win the Derby. We all know what happened. I think he's going to go on. I think he's going to get better and better. I think he's going to have a tremendous 3-year-old season. I do think he's going to win the Belmont. I think he's a great horse. I really do.
Yeah, and I'd certainly agree. I know I went against them here on my top selection, but like I said, that's purely for value in going to the 10-horse and mind frame over Sierra Leone. But I think Sierra Leone's a horse that's built, as you mentioned, to only get better and better from here. I think he's built to win a race like the Belmont and hopefully take on some older horses as the season goes along and we get into the fall into Breeders' Cup season. But certainly wouldn't be shocked to see Sierra Leone in the winner's circle. I think he is probably the most likely horse to win. Just for value reasons, I did land on my frame.
And, when the Belmont is at 1.5 mile distance, there were so many horses that went in the Derby, skipped the Preakness, came back and won and did very well in the Belmont. And so he does have that going for him as well. And, Saratoga is known as the graveyard of favorites.
Yep.
That is so that's something you got to keep in mind as well. They don't always come through with those low odds. So, and again, that also that doesn't necessarily play a part in me picking a long shot second. But certainly, I just said I wanted to find a little value, so I thought the Wine Steward was the horse to do that. So as we have the picks up, my selections are 9, 4, 3, 10 with Sierra Leone on top. Rick has 9, 10, 2, 3 with Sierra Leone on top, and Jacob goes 10, 9, 2, 3 with Mindframe on top. So we said, it's part of a great card on Saturday at Saratoga. It's going to be a great racing weekend at Saratoga because they're going to run 4 racing programs up there that are going to be stellar.
Just kind of at least my summation of the Belmont. I think there's some great storylines in here. You've got Mystic Dan competing in all 3 legs, as we talked about. You got Mindframe, who's been nothing but sensational. 2 out of 2. What's he going to do against this type of competition? Sierra Leone coming back after getting beat literally an inch in the Derby with a new rider. You've got a new rider on what was the other horse that we were just talking about on Honor Marie.
Right.
So a lot of different storylines in this race. I think it's going to there's some below the surface. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like a duck above water. Underneath, there's a lot going on. Exactly. Jake, why don't you tell us what's going on here at Harrah's Hoosier Park on Saturday?
Yeah, we're going to have a great day on Saturday, too. We, of course, have racing. We're going to get started a little bit later. We're going to get started at 7:20 for our 12 race card on Saturday. But we are going to have mega bets on the Hoosier Park card to go along with that. Our VIPs will have a special promotion for the Belmont Stakes. It's just going to be a good day. You can get all your simulcasting on Saratoga here at Harrah's Hoosier Park all day long. We're going to get started early that morning with our simulcasting, so we'll have folks on staff get out programs, get out, take those wagers on Saratoga racing, as it should just be a phenomenal week, as you mentioned, at Saratoga.
Do we have any final thoughts?
I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, it's a great card from top to bottom. I love the Triple Crown events. I know we don't have a horse going for the Triple Crown, but I think this is as good a Belmont with as much interest with being a non-Triple Crown, possibility that I can remember. I think it's going to be a great race. I think it's a great card. Like Jacob said, come on out, enjoy the races from Belmont, settle in from here at Harrah's Hoosier Park, make a great afternoon and evening out of it.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be phenomenal. I think we've had such an incredible Triple Crown so far. Obviously, the incredible finish in the Derby. You have D. Wayne Lucas getting the job done in the Preakness. I think we're going to finish it off with another great race with you kind of mentioning all the storylines that we have kind of culminating here in the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga. So it should just be a phenomenal wrap to what's been a phenomenal Triple Crown.
Absolutely, hoping it's going to be a terrific racing day on Saturday. And we get to take a little rest from our videos. We'll come back for the Hambletonian, which will be at the Meadowlands this summer, and we'll give you our thoughts on that race in our next video. Couple months. We got some time to think about it, boys. I don't know if anyone's going to pick against Carl, but we'll see how that works.
We could start talking about standardbreds now. Carl was just blew me away. Here in the Breeders' Crown, he was just.
Oh, he was
I thought he was the most impressive performance that we saw that weekend.
I do. I agree. It was just unbelievable how good he was in that race, beating TCI, and just never looked like he was going to lose a step of the way.
Going by him like he was standing still.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was tremendous.
Yeah, and TCI looked incredible in his first start of his 3-0 campaign out at the Meadows in Pennsylvania Sire Stakes. And I know Emily and I talked about this weekend too. I hope we get that rivalry. I think Carl might be a step ahead, but man, I would love a good rivalry in that 3-0 Colt Trot division.
That'd be great. That would be awesome.
We have to see how that will work out as the year continues on. For Jacob Reinheimer and Rick Moore, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.